It's time to pull back the curtain on Sony's next generation console. You've had questions, and likely lots of them, since Mark Cerny's Road to PlayStation 5 presentation so many months ago now, and thanks in no small part to the state of the world as it is right now, we've not had the chance to go hands-on with PlayStation 5 until, well, last week. Since then, we've been putting the console through its paces, and let's make things crystal clear here. As you'll see from the raft of coverage we have lined up, I think PlayStation 5 is a home run from Sony. It's not without its faults, but the vision here is crystal clear. What sets Sony's endeavours apart is its commitment to the concept of the console generation. And yeah, PlayStation 5, it's just terrific. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my initial thoughts about the new machine, the controller, the UI, and the various display options you have. I'm also going to be measuring power draw from the machine and getting to grips with the thermal solution, courtesy of some thermal photography of the system under load. But I also want to talk about the experience of PlayStation 5, and key to this is the concept of removing friction, the lag, that has got in the way of today's consoles delivering the plug-and-play experiences of the games machines of old. PlayStation 5 isn't quite as instant as a good old-fashioned cartridge machine, but man, it's a gigantic improvement over the last couple of console generations. Now, PlayStation 5, it can boot from cold in around 13 to 14 seconds, half that if you're booting up from rest mode. Load up Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and you're in the game in around 8 seconds. And you can basically halve that if you're not counting the menu transitions, as I am here. Now, games are going to need to be tailored to this revolutionary new hardware, but look, at launch, this is all hugely impressive stuff. I also think Sony deserves a huge amount of credit for delivering a console that is an enormous improvement in terms of cooling and acoustics compared to PS4 and PS4 Pro. Now, yes, in the unboxing video, we talked about the form factor. It is big, and positioning it within a media cabinet is going to be challenging. Similar to Xbox Series X, I think in horizontal configuration it looks rather ungainly, and it does require the supplied stand to work without wobbling. And if you move the console, there's a good chance that the stand can come loose. Vertically, it just looks better, and obviously it has a much smaller footprint. But you're all here for the thermals and power draw information, right? So let's get to it. First of all, similar to Series X, I think that noise is basically a non-issue, to the point where breaking out the noise meter, pretty much a waste of time. Close up to the console, you can hear the slight whir of the fan, but in living room, office, or bedroom conditions, it disappears into the ambient noise. Also, the sheer size of PlayStation 5 sorts out any potential heat dissipation issues, as you can see as we review the console via thermal photography. Test methodology here. I used photo mode in Spider-Man Miles Morales to freeze frame a high power scene, then applied a ton of filters in an effort to add a few more watts, and then I left the console for an hour. Now, we're going to be talking about power draw just a little bit further on in this video, but as you can see, the thermal camera reveals some fascinating images. The top of the machine is essentially at room temperature, and you get some idea of the positioning of the main system processor by the brighter colour in the middle of the console here. Curious though that just to the right of that, it's still pretty cool, mid-20s Celsius. Taking a look at the front of the console, the heat source at the bottom looks more pronounced, and you can see that side vents are warmer there in the mid-40s. Essentially, they're doing their job. The rear of PlayStation 5 is the main escape for the heat. The whole rear of the unit is basically a big vent, and temperatures hit around 50 Celsius max here generally. You may see hotter white points. The LAN port here hits 57 Celsius, but I think that's just the nature of metal conducting heat, and not really anything to worry about. All told then, job done. PlayStation 5 is indeed a monstrous beast for sure, but the days of jet engine noises coming from your Sony consoles are over. PlayStation 5 is cool and quiet, and that's fantastic. Next up, power draw, and I've synchronized camera feeds of my watt meter with system capture so we can get an idea of what's what with the watt meter. On the front end, power consumption is quite high at 70 watts, but drops back into the 60s. Then, as we boot into Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, we suddenly spike to around 200 watts. Interesting figure this, as it's pretty much on par with what we saw with Gears 5 on Xbox Series X. Now I thought it might be cool to stack up the 4K 30 quality mode with the 4K 60 performance mode. In like-for-like scenes, we're pretty much on par at 195 to 200 watts typically. Does seem to open out a touch with a bit of web slinging though, where the performance mode seems to need more power to get the job done. Now I can repeat that process with Capcom's Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, where both 4K 30 quality and 4K 60 performance modes seem to push the system hard. Again, we're topping out at around 200 watts, sometimes a little higher, sometimes a little lower. PlayStation 5's SoC is based on the idea of a boost clock with a fixed power limit, and the evidence suggests that total system power consumption without factoring in attached peripherals and such is at the 200 watt level. So yeah, as expected, don't be concerned about the 350 watt power supply in the machine. To put that 200 watts into perspective, God of War on PS4 Pro draws about 170. Interestingly though, Astro's Playroom, obviously it's a simpler game and you can see that reflected in the power draw here, but it can spike a little higher in busier scenes. Back compat power draw next. First of all, here's Rise of the Tomb Raider in 4K 30 mode, running a cutscene we can repeat on PS4 Pro and PS5 in compatibility mode. The efficiency gains here are simply excellent. PlayStation 5 is delivering the same workload as PS4 Pro, and sometimes it's requiring 40 watts less to get the job done. Let's take a look at Knack running in PS4 Pro high resolution mode. A curious title choice for sure, but the bottom line is that on PS4 Pro this can drop below 30 frames per second, while on PS5 it's locked 60 from start to finish. Even so, despite almost doubling performance and often exceeding that, PlayStation 5 still draws significantly less power than PS4 Pro, just as we saw in our Xbox Series X power draw and thermal analysis. That's the power of the 7nm silicon right there. So I want to speak a bit about the DualSense controller. You can get most of my thoughts in the PS5 Series X unboxing video, but I wanted to try to convey how good this controller is in a video. And this is difficult because the idea of haptic feedback, resistive triggers, you've got to feel it. Me telling you about it isn't really going to cut the mustard. But well, I can try to simulate the effect for you by recording audio from the pad only. Now yes, there's a speaker in the controller, but I'm resting the DualSense on a solid desk here, and the haptics present almost like a subwoofer. We're converting vibrations into low-end sound here. Okay, so headphones will really help with this. First of all, listen to this. As Astro lands on the ground here, you can hear the bumps, but I'm actually feeling them. The sound is significant, but only because the feel is. Now have a listen as Astro heads into this mini sandstorm. The sound of particles, the roar of the storm, again you're hearing it, but I'm feeling it in the controller. Now let's try something else. The sound here of Astro's metal legs skating over the ice. Again, at the risk of repeating myself, you're hearing it, but I'm feeling it. That punchy low end there, that's all sensation that you'll feel in your hands from the DualSense controller. So just to be clear, what you are hearing there is the DualSense speaker, but also the haptics converted into sound. Let's end this section by fading out the haptics and DualSense speaker and bringing game audio from the console only. But let's move on and look at the user interface and your display options, including HDMI 2.1 features. Let's just say that I love the interface. It feels futuristic, state-of-the-art, premium, next-gen. So yeah, recently Sony put together a presentation highlighting its innovative card system, easy ways to get you into the game, to promote discovery. But man, just the nuts and bolts of the UI are beautiful. Yes, it's a 4K native interface, but it's running throughout in HDR and looks simply terrific. The iconography for each game and background artwork are of a similarly high quality, and I love the way that back-compat titles in SDR are mapped into HDR space, which looks particularly impressive on an OLED display. John's already published a UI tour on the channel, so for the full breakdown be sure to check that out, but I'd like to highlight some basic stuff that caught my eye. And yes, we're going to be answering some FAQs. Now, Microsoft has garnered plaudits for its quick resume system that effectively employs save states for various games, dumping system memory to SSD, then bringing it back in and getting you straight back into the experience. Now, bottom line, PlayStation 5 does not have this. The closest you'll get is the switcher in the dock at the bottom. It's not really the same thing, and its utility is limited. It's like a fast boot, a shortcut if you like. And yeah, SSD space is at a premium on the PlayStation 5 with 667 gigs of available space, so presumably no room for a quick resume-like cache. Next up, let's talk about display options, because this has been a matter of much debate. First of all, HDMI 2.1. Yes, PlayStation 5 supports it. Yes, the HDMI cable you get in the box is good for 4K bandwidth at 120 Hz. Here's a look at the screen and video menu. Looks pretty familiar if you're a PS4 owner, right? On my capture device here, we are limited to HDMI 2.0, so no next-gen display features here. But as with PS4, you can view video output information so you know what formats your screen supports that PS5 can tap into. 4K video transfer rate? That's new, but it's all about chroma subsampling. 422 correlates to -1, 420 to -2. You'll get an ever so slightly reduced level of image quality if you opt for those. But really, it's HDMI 2.1 we really need to test, and that's where this beast comes in. It's LG's 75 Nano 99 display based on its nanocell technology. It supports all of the major HDMI 2.1 features, from 4K to 120 Hz to variable refresh rate right up to native 8K. And here's the thing, with the review firmware we have, HDMI 2.1 features kinda begin and end at 4K 120 Hz. The console may well have 8K labeling on the packaging, but as you can see here, we are limited to 2160p output only, 4K. Dipping into the video output information screen, you can see that we have the full range of HDMI 2.1 features, though 120 Hz is limited to 422. But yeah, no 8K and no mention of VRR. Dipping into LG's setup menus, you can see that we've enabled the HDMI port for full 8K, but right now it's clear that PlayStation 5 simply doesn't support it. No big deal, I think, in the short term, but more disappointing, I think, is the apparent omission, for now at least, of variable refresh rate. Maybe it has to be enabled on a game-by-game basis, but right now, I see no way to get access to this brilliant feature, and that's a shame. Another omission is ALLM, Auto Low Latency Mode. Plug in an Xbox Series console or an Nvidia RTX card and ALLM kicks in, automatically switching the screen to low latency mode, game mode. And here's the thing, for PlayStation 5 on my LG screen at least, I had to do this manually. Not a big deal again, I guess, but I do wonder how many prospective PS5 gamers won't be aware of game mode and will have a laggier experience overall because, well, they haven't selected game mode manually on their screen. So plus and minus points really. I just can't get over how beautiful the front-end UI is. You get the functionality of PlayStation 4 and more, plus the beauty and aesthetics, more reminiscent I think of the old PlayStation 3 UI. I think it looks and feels great, super modern, next level stuff. Minus points, pretty basic HDMI 2.1 support, it has to be said, and no customization beyond HDMI spec, which leads me on to another FAQ. Support for desktop monitors, specifically 1440p displays. So here's my PS5 plugged into my AOC AG271QX, An old but good 1440p screen, supports FreeSync over HDMI with the widest VRR window I could find. Variable refresh rate works great on this one with Xbox One and Series X, but on both HDMI ports, this is what you see with PlayStation 5. Essentially, you're topping out at just 1080p resolution. Looking into the video output report screen there, and well, not much going on. Mileage may vary with other screens, of course, but my suspicion is that only HDMI 2.0 or 2.1 1440p screens will support higher resolutions than 1080p, and even then it's going to be downscaled from 2160p. Here's the same screen running with Xbox Series X. 1440p is selectable as a display resolution, but unfortunately I cannot access higher refresh rates than 60Hz. I do have access to VRR though. So clearly 1440p over HDMI is possible. Xbox is doing it. It's just not in the PS5 feature set right now. So look, there's much more to cover, but we're going to be breaking that out into separate videos. I'd highly recommend checking out the backwards compatibility content. Let's just say that in almost all of the games we tested, we saw the full advantage of the Zen 2 CPU cluster and the 10.3 teraflops of GPU compute, all of that deployed on older games. What this means is that just like Series X, games that don't hit their performance targets now do so easily, producing some transformative experiences in many cases. So yeah, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, 1800p checkerboard, it's now a totally locked 60 frames per second. Dark Souls 3, 1080p 60, no problem whatsoever. Crysis Remastered, 60 frames per second in performance mode, and it's terrific. Sony is also deploying some patches to existing games, and it's been amazing for me to play games like Days Gone and Ghost of Tsushima as full 60 frames per second experiences. Sony has not exactly been hugely forthcoming about its backwards compatibility plans, but by and large everything works beautifully. John's blown away by a 60 frames per second knack experience, and well, come on. Killzone Shadowfall, locked to 60. It's a perfect opportunity to go back and play a game that I still rate as phenomenal. So look, obviously, there's still more to share, clearly, but I've tried to cover off all the FAQs in this one, and really now, it's about the quality of the games. Astro's Playroom comes with the system. It's very special, and I really do recommend you experience it. And Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, well, John's got content for you right now on the channel. But in the here and now, I'm loving what I'm seeing from PlayStation 5 so far. It really is a well put together, almost beautiful experience. It feels special, it feels premium. And it's doing things I've never seen or rather felt before, while software like Miles Morales just feels state of the art. Seriously, if you told me we'd be getting such a well-realized implementation of ray tracing in a mainstream games console a couple of years ago, well, I just wouldn't have believed you. But here it is, and it works, and it's beautiful. Just about the only disappointment so far from my hands-on? Well, VRR, variable refresh rate, it really is a killer feature, and it's a shame that it doesn't seem to be in the system right now. And it is a little strange to have 8K icons on your packaging, but not to support HDMI 2.1 8K. Kind of weird. That latter point though, probably a little fringe. VRR though, that's a must in my opinion. And yet, there are also storage concerns. Why can I only copy PS4 games away from the SSD? If I fill the drive up, I'll need to delete stuff to download more games, then delete other stuff and re-download them if I want to play them again. Come on, we need a decent archiving system here. Xbox lets you copy games to slower storage, but not let you play them. It's for archiving only. Now, this is the obvious fix, and I just don't understand why it's not present here on PlayStation 5. Still though, I really think that people who buy the machine, take it home and power it up won't be disappointed. And yeah, remember, this is just the beginning. Our coverage will continue, and yes, as soon as we can, you'll get the PlayStation 5 versus Series platform comparisons, and also an answer to the question, does PS5 missing certain RDNA 2 features actually matter? This tweet from Microsoft wouldn't have got past AMD or Microsoft's own legal teams if it were not true. But to what extent does it actually matter for gaming? That is the question, and that's what we'll be answering in our platform comparisons. So yes, there's much more to come, but that's all from me right now. Please do like, subscribe and share if you enjoyed the work, and ring the bell for instant notifications from Digital Foundry. The DF Patreon, support the team more directly and you'll get pristine quality video downloads of everything we do. And yeah, you want to see the next gen the way it's meant to be seen, right? But well, that's all from me for now. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of this one, and just generally thanks for watching and supporting Digital Foundry.